discuss. But first, we have something a little more pressing to discuss. It is one of my favorite guys in the history of ever. Texas Attorney General Greg Abbott joins us from Washington, as well he should. Good morning, sir. How are you doing?
Hey, I am doing great. Great to visit with you again, Mark.
Thank you. You are in Washington because the United States Supreme Court today is examining the issue of the redistricting maps drawn for Texas. What will the Supreme Court examine today?
Well, as soon as we hang up the phone, I leave and head directly to the United States Supreme Court, where the high court in the country is going to be hearing the first round of litigation concerning the redistricting process in Texas. The redistricting process is the process by which the state legislature is required by the United States Constitution every 10 years to redraw the lines for the state House, the state Senate, and the United States Congress, the maps that decide who votes in which precinct and which candidates get to run for which office. And here's what happened in the state of Texas that is so important for people to understand, and this is one of the two issues before the U.S. Supreme Court today. And that is that the Republican Party has made a great connection with the Hispanic community over the past couple of years. And in this last election, there were 5 Hispanic Republicans elected to the State House of Representatives and an Hispanic Republican added to the United States Congress. And when the legislature redrew the maps for the next decade, they redrew them in a way that tried to re-elect those 6 Hispanic Republicans. But what happened is we had some plaintiff lawyers come in and file a lawsuit against the state of Texas in the name of the Voting Rights Act that tried to draw new maps that would exclude or maybe remove or vote out from office these 6 Hispanic Republicans who got elected and replace them with Democrats.
Proving that this is not about voting rights for anyone ethnically, that what they're battling for on the other side is not for Hispanic access to higher office, but Democrat Hispanic access to higher office.
This is all about politics, Mark. This is Democrats versus Republicans, and we believe it's an abuse of the Voting Rights Act for them to come in and play partisan politics, and we don't believe the United States Supreme Court is going to look favorably upon this.
Now, you know what's funny? Real quick, let's stay with it first. We got plenty of time. You know what's kind of funny? We as Republicans will be upfront about you. We will tell you. We drew these districts in order to protect these particular Republicans who happen to be Hispanic. You're darn right we did. And you know why? Because that's what we get to do. Every 10 years, the legislature draws these maps. If in a year ending in 0, which is the census years, if Democrats run everything, they're going to draw maps the way they want to draw them, and that's the way the field is striped. So we'll tell you what we're trying to do.
Well, on top of that, Mark, what the United States Supreme Court has said, and that is drawing redistricting maps for political purposes is perfectly legally acceptable. So what the state legislature did is consistent with the United States Supreme Court precedent. But here's the second thing going on today, and that is that there was a 3-judge panel in San Antonio that engaged in judicial activism because they took the maps that were drawn by the state of Texas and they agreed with the claims that were brought by the plaintiffs, and they completely disregarded the will of the elected officials who went to Austin to represent the policies of the people who sent them there, and instead used judicial fiat to rewrite those maps based from scratch. Now, here's the deal. I immediately appealed that ruling to the U.S. Supreme Court, and the U.S. Supreme Court agreed to not only take the case, but to stay or to stop further processes with regard to the election, so much so that it looks like we may even move the primaries. But here's my point in telling you that. There's no way the United States Supreme Court would get involved in the process of the Texas election cycle if they thought that what the lower court did was anywhere even close to being right. So it looks like the United States Supreme Court is going to agree with us that the lower court agreed in judicial activism by trying to rewrite and redraw what the Texas election maps should look like.
Now, how does this affect the primary schedule? We were all looking forward to a March 6th primary just under 2 months from now. Now the date most recently you heard about is now April 3rd, and maybe that's even shaky. While the courts settle this all over the place, We got presidential candidates that are interested in winning Texas. I know one in particular that would like to get a bump in Texas. He's our governor. We'll talk about him in a minute. We also have a crowded field running for Kay Bailey Hutchison's soon-to-be vacated Senate seat. And they'd like to know when people are going to vote for them. When will we know?
Well, we'll know here pretty soon. First of all, we understand the need for speed. Both the voters and the candidates need to know as soon as possible. The parties need to know as soon as possible so that we can get these elections going. The answer really depends upon how long it takes the United States Supreme Court to render its decision. Let's just say hypothetically that later this week, on Friday of this week, the Supreme Court hands down an opinion that says the Texas maps are the appropriate maps to use for this election cycle. Believe it or not, if the Supreme Court were to do that, we would even be able to have the elections take place on their original timetable on March the 6th. At the latest, they would be scheduled for the April 3rd date that was plugged in by the three-judge panel in San Antonio. But the real answer, Mark, is it just depends on how long the U.S. Supreme Court takes to answer the question.
So we cannot have a firm Texas primary date until we get this ruling from the United States Supreme Court.
That's exactly right, but I'm sure most people agree that speed is very, very important, but it may be even more important, and that is that the elections that do take place are elections based upon maps that are legal as opposed to illegal elections.
Does the court have a fire lit under it? Because a lot of times these rulings can move at the speed of a glacier. They can sit on this, and we could end up looking at primary in July.
Well, no, the court, for one, does have a fire lit under it because they, within days after us filing our appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court, they took the case. They set it for an expedited briefing schedule, and it was just weeks after we filed the case in the U.S. Supreme Court that we're here in Washington, D.C. for oral argument. The Supreme Court understands and appreciates the need for speed and the need to correct what the lower court did. So I really do anticipate a ruling out of the U.S. Supreme Court very, very quickly.
It is 12 minutes after 10. Texas Attorney General Greg Abbott joining us from Washington, where all the U.S. Supreme Court action is. Let's talk a little presidential campaign trail. Attorney General Abbott remains a strong and proud member of the Rick Perry team. Not a great night in Iowa. It's really not going to be great tomorrow here for Governor Perry. But South Carolina lies ahead, and things could get brighter for him there.
Well, you're exactly right. First of all, I did have the opportunity to experience Iowa last week, and I was there campaigning for the governor and visiting at caucuses and visiting with people in Iowa. They're good people, but they obviously didn't vote Rick Perry's way. I think Perry does connect better with the people of South Carolina. Been more consistent with his philosophy, with his beliefs, geographically more connected with the governor. And so, as he mentioned earlier, he views the South Carolina primary as the line in the sand of the Alamo. And he's going to fight there and try to resurrect his campaign at that stage. I think if he can come in third or fourth place in South Carolina, he will have turned the corner. He will be back in the race. He has the resources to continue to wage a vigorous campaign. He has a message that connects with America. He has a message that will create new jobs, reduce regulations, promote growth in this country, and help get Washington out of people's business and let people have the liberty that they were guaranteed under the United States Constitution.
Texas Attorney General Greg Abbott, safe travel home, sir. Thank you very much for the update there. And I know you got a cab to catch down to Capitol Hill to get to the Supreme Court, so best of luck there, and thanks for fighting the Texas battle.
Thank you, Mark.
That is Attorney General Greg Abbott of Texas, just a hero in every sense of the word. All right, just in talking to Attorney General Abbott, whom I love, and his passion for Governor Perry, whom I've known forever and whose candidacy